started. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar in our Lunching with the League series. My name is Nazik Hapasha, Program Associate at the League of Women Voters of Ohio, and I would like to introduce the President of our Board of Directors, Iris Meltzer, who will be moderating the rest of this event. Iris Meltzer is a member of the Kent League. She holds a master's degree in psychology from Western Carolina University and a master's of public health from the Consortium of Eastern Ohio Master of Public Health Program, for whom she served as accreditation consultant from 2013 to 2016. Iris retired from Akron Children's Hospital after 28 years as the Administrator for Adolescent Health Services. Previously, she was a founding member and director of Portage County's first shelter for battered women and their children. She has been a member of the League since 2011 and served as its president for 4 years. She was also a member of Kent's Membership Leadership Development Team. She has been on the board of the Ohio League for the last 3.5 years, previously serving as secretary. Iris is a community activist, serving as vice chair for the Portage County Mental Health and Recovery Board and as a member of the Kent Free Library Foundation Board. Iris?
Thanks so much, Nazik. I really appreciate that introduction. Sometimes I'm not sure who you were talking about, but I guess tis I. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this noon for another one of our Lunching with the League events. I am pleased today to welcome Senator Kristina Roegner. She is serving her first term in the Ohio Senate, representing the 27th Senate District, which includes Wayne County and parts of Summit and Stark counties. She joins the Senate after serving 4 terms in the Ohio House from 2011 to 2018. Prior to her time in public office, she worked as a management consultant at McKinsey & Company, serving global clients on performance and strategic issues. She also was a field engineer and project manager for Westinghouse Power Generation Service Division, where she was responsible for leading teams to overhaul large turbines and generators at power plants across the country. Senator Roegner graduated cum laude in 1990 with a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering from Tufts University. She also holds a Master of Business Administration degree with a concentration in finance and strategic management from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. Senator Roegner served as an elected member of Hudson City Council from 2005 to 2010. She and her husband, Eric, have 3 daughters and live in Hudson. During this 134th General Assembly, her committee assignments include Government Oversight and Reform Committee, for which she is chair, the Ways and Means Committee, which she serves as vice chair, and the Health and Transportation Committees. Thanks so much for joining us this noon, Senator Kristina Roegner, and I turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Well, Iris, thank you so much for inviting me today for this luncheon series. I'm looking forward to the discussion with you and the members. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. I was originally just going to start out by introducing myself, but you've done that for me. I guess, one thing I just want to highlight to take away is, I originally started in the private sector as an engineer. I loved math and science. And so I followed that passion and I loved engineering. I was a mechanical engineer for a while, ended up going back and studying business, worked at McKinsey & Company. Again, just really enjoyed that. I met my husband while I was at McKinsey, and then we were married, and 5 years later had our first of 3 daughters. And it was at that point that I decided when Catherine was born, my oldest daughter, that I was going to stay home for a while and raise her. And so I did. I left McKinsey at that point and raised her, and I had my second daughter. And then at that point, I said, my dad was on Hudson City Council, and I thought this would be, I started to really pay attention then. I mean, up until then, I paid my taxes and, I read the newspapers and I voted, but that was about the extent of my civic involvement. But when my dad was on city council and I was at home with the kids, I started to really pay attention. I'm like, well, these are some really interesting issues. And I threw my hat in the ring for city council. And I really had no previous experience on council or really in any boards or commissions for that matter. But I started to run for council. And then I realized I was pregnant with my third daughter. And lo and behold, that third daughter was born on election day. And it was 2005, November 8th, 2005. I remember it well because I gave birth to my youngest daughter, Christine. And later that night, like around 9 or 10 o'clock, I don't remember exactly when, the mayor of Hudson called to congratulate me that I had won election to Hudson City Council. And I was like, wow, what a good day that was. So then I was on city council for 5 years. I loved it because you could really make a difference in the lives of just everyone in your community. And the topics were so varied, and I found them interesting. You could have a lot of impact. So that was great. I was reelected then for Hudson City Council in 2009. And then in 2010, ran for the Ohio General Assembly. And I did beat the incumbent and was elected then in 2010. I was sworn in 2011. My passion was a couple things. One was just making sure government was open and transparent and accountable to the people. Secondly, that we were fiscally responsible. And to me, that means government spends money where you need to, where it makes a difference, where it's important. But we don't waste money, and we're just very, just very vigilant about making sure we don't waste any money. And then also making it easier for people to work, and that means regulatory reform and also, well, actually, let me back up. Setting a stage that's inviting to business. And so that includes regulatory reform, lower taxes, and that sort of thing. So that was my platform when I ran, and that has been really, truly consistent for 8 years that I was in the Ohio House, and now I'm just now starting my third year. You're right, I'm still in my first term, but I'm just starting the second General Assembly in the Ohio Senate. I've really loved serving in the General Assembly. It's been great because, again, just like in City Council, but in a much larger scale, you can positively affect the lives of almost 12 million people across the state of Ohio. So what have I been working on this GA? Actually, the funny thing is, I just had knee surgery. So I have been taking all the time that I used to spend, exercising, and I've just been really focusing on legislation, which has been great. So I've been cranking out the legislation this GA. I have 6 of the top 10 bills in the Senate this time around. I am the sponsor of Senate Bill 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9. So let me just address some of those bills. 4 of them are compact-related bills. The Physical Therapist Compact, the Occupational Therapist Compact, the Nurse Compact, and the Doctor Compact. Now, what are those? Those are all licensure bills, so occupational licensure. And that would join Ohio to these compacts, which are agreements between member states that if a person has a particular, like a physical therapist license to practice physical therapy, in the state of Ohio, the other states would recognize that. And so that person could travel and serve patients across those different states. And the same for the others. The only one that's slightly different is the doctor one, the physician compact, which is called the IMLC. It's Interstate Medical Licensure Compact. That one is not so much like a driver's license, but more like TSA pre-check. The physical therapist, the occupational therapist, and the nurse one, it's almost like if you want to imagine, you get your driver's license from the state of Ohio, and you're allowed to go to all the other states with your Ohio driver's license, and they recognize it. And that's great. So you don't have to get like a Kentucky license if you want to drive to Kentucky. So it just is all about efficiency. The doctor one's slightly different. That one's like TSA pre-check. So they do all of the background checks for that doctor, and then the doctor can have licenses expedited in those other states. But all four of those, the intention is to just really make it easier for people to use their skills that they've learned, and also to improve patient access care. There's also Senate Bill 4, which helps 911 operators and drone pilots, keeping their information more private, familial information, where they live and so forth, because both of these organizations have reached out and said, it's dangerous in many cases for retaliation purposes, and we need to keep that safe. There are no opponents. Even the Newspaper Association are fine with it. So that one should be moving through as well. Senate Bill 9 is a former Senate Bill 1 from the previous General Assembly. So we just reintroduced it. It basically would cut regulations by 30% in the state of Ohio. The George Mason Center, or Mercatus Center at George Mason University, did a study of they did 44 states in this country to compare the number of rules and regulations. And Ohio is tied for third place of being the worst in terms of the most rules and regulations. We're following right after California and New York. So the idea is, let's take a good hard look at those and keep the ones that are necessary, because certainly many are necessary to benefit and keep consumers safe, and our environment safe and so forth. But if there's any overlap or duplication, or just, if there's some that are outdated or not necessary anymore, let's get rid of them, because it's like sludge in the economic engine. So those are 7 of the top, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9. Yeah, so that's 6 of the top 10 bills. And then I've also got another bill I'm working on this week, which I think hopefully we'll see come to the floor this week, and that's a tax conformity bill. Every so often, as the federal government changes their tax laws, it's in Ohio we don't have to, but we should conform with that, because Ohio's taxes start with the federally adjusted gross income as a starting point and then goes from there. And if we don't conform, then you're going to have all the Ohioans having to add things back and subtract, and just doing a lot more math and making what's already a very complex tax system even more complex. So, so that's those are some of the things that I'm working on this General Assembly. I'd love to pause and just see if there's any questions.
Sure. Thank you so much. That was really helpful and insightful and informative. There seems to be a growth in Republican women running for office. And what do you see, and what issues do you think women face in running for legislative office in Ohio?
Well, I think women, I'd love to see more women get involved and run for office, because women bring such a unique, I think, we're at least half the population. Let's start with that. And we're certainly not half of the representation. I don't think in any chamber that I can, certainly not in Ohio, and certainly not in federal government either. So first of all, just in a matter of just representation, we should have at least half the members. But also we bring perspectives of, raising family and children, and thinking about, I think as women, we really truly think about making sure the future is going to be bright for our kids and grandkids. Not to say that men don't do the same thing, and certainly they do, but I think women just come with that, it's in our blood, just to make sure that we leave this state and this nation in a better condition than we found it. Speaking of different points of view and representation, and that's one thing that I do really love about the General Assembly, is that we have business people there, we've got doctors, we have former teachers and business people, attorneys, and people come from all walks of life. And when I see those different professions come together that makes legislation better, because you bring, you can ask different questions and bring different perspectives. And I think women, having, and that's true for actually, different races too, blacks and whites, and have men and women. I think the more perspectives and opinions you can bring to bear, the better the outcome's going to be. So yeah, so I'd love to see more women run. The challenges for women, and this isn't across the board, but I found a lot of women don't seem to think they can do it, and they really can. We do have a lot of responsibilities, generally speaking. Now, again, not in all cases. Certainly there are many men that stay home and raise the kids, but in large part still the woman is going to be the primary caregiver for any children. So you're going to have those responsibilities, and that's a time commitment as well. So it's just balancing and juggling a lot of balls. But women, I think we are the best multitaskers, so we can do it.
Thank you. I want to back up to a question that an audience member raised. You talked about the various compacts that you've introduced bills to address. Are those compacts state specific? Are they across the country?
Oh, interesting. Yes. Thank you for the question. So each one is different. The Physical Therapist Compact has 29 member states so far, and there's more joining all the time. Ohio, if we pass this legislation, of course, would be the 30th. The Nurse Compact, for example, has 34 states already that have joined. So a good number of states have joined. But let's see, the Occupational Therapy Compact hasn't actually technically started yet. It needs 10 states to pass legislation to join before it actually takes effect. So Ohio would be a leader in the occupational therapy one. And the nurse one, the IMLC, the doctor one, that's also 29 member states. And again, more joining all the time. So, a year from now, those numbers could have changed.
Great, thank you so much. What is your current position on allowing Ohioans to obtain absentee ballots online, as has been requested by Secretary of State LaRose?
Yeah, no, I'm all for being able to facilitate and make things easier and online. Yeah, absolutely. I would support that, as long as we make sure that we keep parameters and guidelines and guardrails in place to make sure that there's no fraud and abuse for that.
Wonderful, thank you. We will, as a state, be drawing new district lines for both our legislative and congressional districts this year. What outcome do you hope to see?
Well, I hope that we'll have fair and reasonable boundaries. Yeah, I represented the 37th House District for 8 years, or its equivalent thereof. It was all redistricted in the beginning of it, but that, I think, is an example of a fair and district. I mean, I'm Republican. It was held by a Democrat before me. I held it for 8 years until I was term limited out, and then it's gone back to a Democrat. It's very compact. It's just a northeast corner of Summit County. I mean, to me, that is like a perfectly drawn district, number one. So I'd like to see as many of those in the state, and why is that? Because just by nature, if you have a competitive district, you're as an elected representative, you're going to need to really work hard to make sure you continue to earn the votes of the people, and you also have to listen and really engage with your constituency. So I think that benefits it. The second thing I would like to see from redistricting, and now I'm talking more about the congressional redistricting is, I hope we don't lose more than one seat. I mean, I ideally wouldn't lose any, but we're waiting for the consensus numbers to come back to see how Ohio fares with respect to the other states in this nation. And I hope we don't lose more than one there.
Well, as redistricting champions, I'm sure we're all pleased to hear that from you today. Do you think that Ohio needs more transparency with regard to issue and campaign financing, so-called dark money contributions? And how do we fix that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly as I started out, in my introduction, one of the first things I talked about was transparency and accountability for government, and that my passion for transparency and accountability goes also from government also to how people run their campaigns, and that includes getting the funding for their campaigns. So certainly I am supportive of increasing transparency in any way that we can for campaigns. Right now, as you know, and hopefully everyone that's watching knows, if you want to find out any donor to any state rep or state senator, you can go to the Secretary of State website and see that. The question, of course, is the dark money, right? And I think we've seen, some issues with that, certainly surrounding the whole Speaker Householder debacle over in the House. That was very concerning. So I am definitely open to whatever we can do to increase the transparency there as well.
Well, speaking of Senator Householder in general.
Speaker Householder, not Senator Householder.
Speaker,
to be clear, I'm in the Senate, he was in the House.
Yep, I misread my notes.
That's all right.
Do you support or not support repeal of House Bill 6?
Oh, I support the repeal of it. I mean, I co-sponsored a bill to repeal it in the last General Assembly. And by the way, I never actually voted for House Bill 6 in the first place. So I would support the repeal of House Bill 6. Now I do have a background in the utility industry. And so I will say that, as you introduced me, you mentioned Westinghouse power generation. So I do know that industry quite well. And I think there is a huge amount of value, and it's extremely important to make sure that we keep a diverse energy portfolio. We don't want all our eggs in one basket. We don't want all our eggs in coal or gas or nuclear or wind or solar. We need all of it, because what happens if one day you can't get any natural gas for one reason or another, or something else happens, we need to make sure that we can still get energy. So we need that diversification. And the nuclear power plants, they are workhorses in the industry. They do produce energy, lots of energy, and it is carbon free. So I think there is a lot to be said for keeping, if we can, nuclear as part of our energy portfolio. But that being said, the way I look at that whole thing with House Bill 6 is it's very much like Lance Armstrong winning the Tour de France. I mean, that House Bill 6 might have passed, we don't know, without that scandal that ensued over in the House. But because there is that question surrounding it, just like Lance Armstrong using performance enhancing drugs, they did need to strip that yellow jersey from him, because you're like, we don't know. So from that perspective, that's why I did co-sponsor the bill to repeal House Bill 6, because I'm like, you know what, we got to take it back and then look at it and figure out what we're going to do with our energy policy moving forward. So.
Thank you. A couple of questions, about education.
Sure.
Excuse me, I'm congested today. You have been quoted as saying that Ohio charter schools need more oversight. Will you explain that, please?
Oh, well, I'm not sure exactly when that quote came from, but certainly, if you recall back, I was a primary sponsor for House Bill 2, which did provide provided for the first time additional oversight for charter schools. Charter schools have been referred to as the wild, wild west, right? And this was, and forgive me for not remembering the year that I sponsored House Bill 2. It was, gosh, I want to say it was 131st General Assembly. But that was really landmark policy for putting some guardrails around charter schools, which the public schools really still thank me for today for passing that. I mean, we put guardrails on, sponsor hopping, for example, because if a charter school, if a sponsor would drop them, well, they used to be able to change and go to other sponsors. And we said, no, you can't do that. We added what's called a 20% footnote, again, to increase transparency in terms of how they spend their money. So basically, if you spend more than 20% on any one item, we need to have that broken down. So yeah, it was really the newspapers, the media, the public schools, everyone really liked that. And quite frankly, even the high-performing charter schools liked it too, because the high-performing charter schools wanted the bad apples out or identified. So yeah, so I was a sponsor of House Bill 2.
And there is currently a House Bill 1, obviously not in your section, but that addresses education. What do you think of House Bill 1 and where do you stand on it?
House Bill 1 is the reintroduction of the Cupp-Patterson plan. So again, right now I'm in the Senate, so it hasn't come over to us at all. But if you want to roll back a bit and take a, what did I think about the Cupp-Patterson plan from the last General Assembly? I did have a meeting with the League of Women Voters a couple months ago via Zoom, and I know I did tell them that I was supportive of it.
Thank you. The opioid payments that Ohio will be receiving, excuse me, we're going to be asked to spend the resultant payout to states to use in fighting addiction. What would you suggest are the best ways to spend those funds?
Oh, well, great. I have not been asked this question before. That's a good one. So, from my perspective, and again, I'm certainly open to any ideas here, but one of the best things we can do to fight opioid addiction is to prevent it before it starts. Both my daughters, one of them just graduated from Hudson High School 2 years ago, and she's at Princeton now, but the other one's still a senior at Hudson High School. They started what was called Drug-Free Clubs of America there. And the idea there is that they got the students in the high school to join drug-free clubs. They submit to a drug test. They commit to be drug-free. In exchange, they get a card. The whole community has come around them. They get discounts in the stores in Hudson. And the cool thing was, and the reason I'm telling you this is because when the students started sending me resumes for whatever reason, I would see their resumes. On there, I started to see Drug-Free Clubs of America on their resumes. And I'm like, first I thought, why are they putting that in there? And then I realized, how cool is that? That this is a way for these students to say, you know what, we have made this commitment. We're proud we made this commitment. We want everyone to know we're making a commitment to be drug-free because it's important for colleges and potential employers. And then I started to think, I'm like, how cool is this? If you can stop someone from taking drugs in the first place, how much less expensive that is than on the back end of years and years and years of rehab and the tragedy that ensues. I mean, just this winter, a friend of mine lost a grown child for the drug use. I mean, my husband's niece, so my niece, I guess, died several years ago too from an overdose of opioids. I mean, so it really truly affects all segments of society, and we need to stop it before it starts. So to answer your question, how would I spend that money? I would spend a good portion of it in prevention. Because I think they'll get a lot of bang for the buck there. Obviously, we can't spend it all on prevention. I get that. We need to treat those that are already currently drug addicted as well. But whatever we can do in prevention, I think you're getting at least 10-for-1 return on your money there.
Well, that is certainly a message I will take back to the Portage County Mental Health and Recovery Board because it is relevant to that group that I sit on. Let's see, you talked earlier about the intent to reduce regulations in the state. Can you give any examples of what you see as extraneous or duplicative regulations?
Well, yeah, the one that comes to mind, I just like to use, well, it's not duplicative so much as kind of silly. And this is one that we just did recently address. It had to do with boilers. So in the state of Ohio, this regulation was put in place back before the Titanic sailed, right? And the regulation or the rule said, you can't have boilers bigger than a certain size. So what happened then is, and it's measured in number of square feet. So what happened is the boiler manufacturers came up with a boiler that was just under that size limit, and guess what those were called? Ohio specials. So hospitals or people that need, or organizations that need large boiler capacity, instead of buying the boiler they needed, because, oh, by the way, I'm sorry, if you had a boiler that was bigger than that square footage, you would need to have a licensed boiler operator sitting by that boiler 24/7, like literally babysitting your boiler. So they said, no, that's kind of expensive. So they ended up getting these Ohio specials and putting them in series. So just literally lining up the boilers instead of buying the boiler they needed. I mean, you're laughing, and it is kind of funny, but I had a poor man that sells boilers come to me and say, this is the situation. It's crazy because no other state has this, but Ohio, we call them Ohio specials. Can you please fix it? So, so we took it through the process and we fixed it. And now you can have, the boiler size you need. Obviously they meet safety standards and requirements, that they can sell them. So it's this little kind of silly things like that. You're just like, that doesn't make sense. That we want, everyone to go through the process of weeding those out.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, since we are known for voter service activities here at the League, what do you think is the best opportunity to improve voter turnout in Ohio?
Wow. I think in Ohio, I believe we do a pretty good job in terms of, you can vote on election day, you can vote ahead of time, I think we do try to honestly make it easy to vote and hard to cheat, right? I mean, that was the slogan I think used by Secretary Husted before, and I think maybe adopted by Secretary LaRose. And I think we all follow that. I think what the best thing that we can do, and I know the League of Women Voters serves a very vital role in that, is to make sure people are informed. And informed about a couple things. Informed, number one, about that their vote counts and it matters. And that many elections are actually really close. And even state rep and state senator elections, just look at Senator Coonsey's race recently, right? Some of these votes these elections are determined seriously by a handful of votes. So your vote does matter. And then also to make sure they're informed so that they vote correctly. The last thing you want people doing is voting for someone because they like the sound of their last name, or flipping a coin when it comes to an issue. I mean, that would be the worst thing for them to do. So, and again, I think the League can serve a very vital role there, like what you're doing right now, just getting people familiar with the candidates and where they stand on issues. I think that's the best thing that can be done. Make sure they're informed.
Great. I think we'll keep on doing that.
Thank you.
You're chair now of the Senate Government Oversight and Reform Committee. Can you tell us about the function of that committee and what you would like to accomplish there this year?
Yes, thank you. Well, honestly, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to define that committee because like Ways and Means, you can say it's all taxes. Health, it's all health. Government Oversight and Reform, it seems like we get a lot of interesting bills. Perhaps it don't fit anywhere else. Right now we're hearing, some probably high profile bills. Senate Bill 17, sponsored by Senator Schaefer, would try to prevent fraud and abuse when it comes to entitlements such as unemployment or SNAP benefits. We've got Senate Bill 22, which would engage the legislature in these health orders, or from the Department of Health, or the governor, and that of course is very high visibility as well. Senate Bill 9, the one that I'm sponsoring for regulations, cutting that by 30%, is in that committee. So there's really not necessarily a common theme, other than, I think, the way I call it is, these are really interesting bill committee.
Thanks.
If you want more clarification, ask me another question, but I don't know what else to say, except they're really cool bills and I love my committee.
And it's early days.
Yeah.
During the lame duck session, you co-sponsored a bill that would have abolished the death penalty. No. Do you think there's a chance that the death penalty will be banned in Ohio?
I do. Yeah. So I am pro-life. I always have been. I believe in the sanctity of life from conception to natural death. So I have sponsored several pro-life bills from the beginning of life spectrum, but also then I co-sponsored the elimination of the death penalty bill too, because at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in redemption, and that every human life has value, and who are we to say that life has no value anymore, and that person, shouldn't breathe and take another breath. So I guess, and it's funny because that's one issue where I have changed my perspective over my time in the General Assembly. I think when I came into the General Assembly, for example, I've always been pro transparency and accountability, and I've always been a fiscal conservative, and I've always, and I do support the Second Amendment, but on this death penalty issue, I think when I came into the General Assembly, I was more for, if they're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, send them to the electric chair, fine, whatever, the death penalty. But the more I thought about it, and the more I prayed about it, and I am a Christian, and it kept coming back to me, that story in the Bible where there was a woman that had been accused of adultery, and she was about to be stoned. And back then, that was the capital punishment of the day, right? Stone. Well, one of the ways, there were multiple ways of capital punishment, but she was going to be stoned. And then Jesus said, "Let the person that has not sinned cast the first stone." And that just keeps resonating to me. And then she was redeemed and turned her life around, and just. So, he believed in second chances. And so who are we not to? So I don't know, that parable just kept coming back to me, or that story in the Bible just kept coming back to me. And so I did change and did co-sponsor that bill then to repeal the death penalty. And that's why, my personal story as to why.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think this will be the final question this afternoon, and it has to do with another aspect of league work, which is as advocates. So although, as you know, we're nonpartisan, we're very political. And one of our concerns is that in this time of COVID, which will last for who knows how much longer, we feel it unsafe to provide testimony in Columbus because it's a room full of people, many of whom are unmasked. And of course, as with so many people, many of our members are vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering what your position is on our ability and the ability of all advocates in the state to provide online testimony to the Senate and the House.
That's a interesting question. I guess generally I would be supportive of that. We have not really truly debated that. So to be fair, I guess I haven't really thought through all sides of it, but I think a lot of the work that we do, I know city councils went online, school boards went online. We're doing it now online. And it does increase efficiency because you think you don't have to spend all that 2 hours driving each way to Columbus. So, you know, certainly I would be open to it. I think it would need to be managed carefully, but I think it could be done. I'd be supportive of that.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon, Senator Roegner. It's been most helpful, and we've, I think, got a lot of insights into both your role as well as what's happening in the General Assembly at this point. So again, thank you. We do have some upcoming events that we'd like to share with you, including how to contact you. So if you'd like additional opportunities to speak with or communicate with Senator Roegner, on your screen is both her phone number as well as her email address, as well as her website. So there's your opportunity. The next Lunching with the League program will be on February 22nd, also at noon, and it will feature Ohio Representative Bridget Kelly, who represents District 31 in the Cincinnati area. So do plan on joining us. We have some other league events coming up. The Fair District Speakers Bureau training tomorrow at 7 p.m. or is it Wednesday? I don't even know what day of the week it is anymore. Tomorrow at 7. Then February 22nd in the evening, the trainer for community map making facilitators. So we will be doing some map making contests this year. And if you want to work with folks on how to do that, do join us on February 22nd. And then we're having our second virtual State House Day. We did it last year at the last minute when, oops, everything closed down. This year we've been able to plan a little better with a little more lead time. So Wednesday, March 3rd from 10:30 to 2 p.m. is our virtual State House Day. You can register for that event on our website, and you see that information there. Registration fee is $20. Scholarships will be available for students, so you can email the office to ask for more information, and hope to see you there. Virtual State House Day, I believe, is open to non-members. However, you can join the league at the website that you see there. Primary or individual memberships are $60 a year. It's an additional $30 for household memberships, and then student memberships at $5 a year. So do consider becoming a member. Thank you all, and we will be seeing you in additional virtual formats and opportunities to meet with you. Again, thank you so much.